Right, I can see there's still quite a few people trickling in, but in the interest of keeping to timing today, because we've got lots to get through, I'm just going to start introducing now. So hopefully everyone can hear me okay and can see the slides. And let's get started. So welcome everyone to today's webinar, which is the next one in our Epigeum Thought Leadership series. And today we're going to be discussing academic integrity and artificial intelligence, which are both hot topics in the current climate of higher education. My name is Marianne, and I work within the marketing team at Epigeum. I'll be facilitating today's webinar alongside my colleague Katie, who is doing all the tech support behind the scenes. Next slide, please, Katie. So Epigeum, which is part of Sage Publishing, is a leading provider of online training courses supporting the needs of higher education institutions in three core areas: research, support and wellbeing, and studying. So today we're going to be thinking about studying and specifically academic integrity. So I'm very pleased to welcome our prestigious expert speakers, Zeenath Khan and Olumide Popoola, both of whom have a wealth of knowledge within this field and have also worked with Epigeum as authors for our most recent edition of our online academic integrity course. I'm delighted to have both of you here today with us, presenting on such a crucial topic for us all in the higher education community. So we'll hear from both guests shortly, but first, just a quick housekeeping message. We have a Q&A box and a chat function, so please do write in any questions throughout for our speakers, and we will try to answer these towards the later part of the session. And also just to bear in mind is that this webinar is being recorded and will also be shared after the event. So now that my housekeeping is complete, I'd like to introduce our first guest speaker, Dr. Zeenath Khan. Zeenath is the founding president and board member of the E9WG Centre for Academic Integrity in the UAE, associate member, Professor of Responsible Information Systems at the Faculty of Engineering and Information Sciences at the University of Wollongong in Dubai, and the recently elected board member for the European Network for Academic Integrity. So Zeenath, if you'd like to share your screen and start your presentation, over to you. I think you're just on mute, Zeenath.
Right, thank you. Thank you so much for the invite. It's a great opportunity to be here to talk about something that I'm really passionate about, not just about Gen AI, but just ethics and personal responsibility in general when it comes to academia. So I'm really excited to be here. I know I have 20 minutes, so I've got my timer going. So welcome to all the audience. Thank you so much for being here, for registering to join our session. I'm going to be trying to kind of take you through a little bit about ethics and personal moral responsibility when it comes to Gen AI in academia. Just a quick disclaimer, because learning is a lifelong process, I've learned that I must mention parts of the presentation that you see today I have used in other presentations that I've done on technology and education, presentations and seminars I've done for schools and other universities, and also some from my PhD dissertation, which was like a lot of years ago. I've learned this practice from one of my closest friends and mentors, Dr. Teddy Fishman, who is the former director for International Center for Academic Integrity in the USA. I'm hoping to kind of touch upon a little bit about EdTech, then moving on to AI education, concerns, reality, and then looking into academic integrity and the way forward. So we all, of course, know technology is absolutely crucial, and it is in our classroom. It's been in our classroom for a while now. I mean, we've managed to survive COVID with remote learning, distance learning. We've always had technology for a while in our classrooms, whether we've acknowledged it or not. And it has been a boon more than anything else. But when it comes to artificial intelligence, is it really a new phenomenon? Please have a look at this bit of text. I'll give you a few seconds to read that. So if you are thinking of a year that this was published in, or maybe what it might be referring to, you will be surprised to know this was the engine, which is a fictional device that was described by Gulliver's Travels, in Gulliver's Travels by Jonathan Swift, all the way back in 1726. And the reason I tell you this is because we've always had this romance so to speak, with artificial intelligence and technology. Primarily, kudos to science fiction, novels, and of course, Hollywood. Even right now, if you speak to somebody on average, what do you think artificial intelligence is like? What do you think it's going to head to? And eventually somebody somewhere is going to tell you, oh, it's going to be a killer robot knocking on my door, because that is the image that has been sold to us. But is it really a new phenomenon? It isn't. It's been around for a while. People have been talking about it beyond science fiction, and it has become a science that people are actively studying, researching, and innovating in. It is ubiquitous and omnipresent. It's all around us. Again, not something we realize. And this very interesting study in 2021 by Parallel Consulting kind of puts that on the mark. They asked people whether they used AI. They didn't, 50% of them didn't even realize that they were using AI. And if you generally ask people, other than ChatGPT and generative AI, do you use AI? People usually go, no. But think about every time you are on your phone and you're trying to search something, right? And the autofill comes in. That's AI right there for you. Every time you are writing something, it corrects it or prompts you to finish that sentence. That's AI for you. If you use Siri or any other virtual assistant, that's AI right there for you. Email spam filters also use artificial intelligence in the background. So AI is very much, very, very much all around us. We just normally don't realize that it is all around us and we are using it. If you're on social media and the prompts are coming that these are things that you might like, or you're on Netflix and you're trying to watch a show and it says, these are the other types of shows that you might like, that all is artificial intelligence in the background. It is constantly learning about you and it's trying to prompt you based on what it thinks you like, and the profile that it has developed for you. So artificial intelligence in education, again, has been there for some time. Whenever we are personalizing learning with data analytics and trying to understand the student and their learning and engagement behaviors, that's AI. When we are doing collaborative learning with a lot of the tools that we use, that's AI again. Accessibility and inclusiveness, especially for in the UAE, we say students of determination. These are students with any kind of either learning disabilities, physical disabilities. So accessibility and inclusiveness, again, for students in this group also has been tremendously helped and supported because of AI. Think of text to voice conversion. That's artificial intelligence, whether we realize it or not. Facial recognition, that's artificial intelligence. Content creation has been there for some time now. Automated grading and feedback has been there for some time now. So again, all of these are services that have been there with AI supporting education for a while. Now, when you think about AI content generators, again, text is not the only one. You've got music that can be generated, art or images, or even movies that can be generated. Yes, only thing is, of course, it kind of came into everybody's peripheral vision because of ChatGPT, OpenAI, and because Microsoft decided to invest millions into this company. Then suddenly everybody was like, what is all this about? And because OpenAI itself has been very smart in the way they've developed the model. Unlike other websites, this is a chat. And we know how much we love to chat, right? We'd much rather be chatting than talking. So that ease of chatting and getting answers in the same tone that I'm chatting in is what really made generative AI popular since 2023 January. But we also know there's plenty of concerns and challenges all around generative AI, from thinking about accountability and acknowledgement in terms of the information that is being produced and being used. If I take something from ChatGPT, let's say if I'm using it, I'm going to keep referring to ChatGPT, but that's not the only Gen AI tool that we have out there, of course. But let's say we are going to be using it to generate some text. Who do I acknowledge for that information? Because ChatGPT cannot be acknowledged, it's just a tool. And think about it, every time you use Word and it does an autocorrect, We don't go back and write this sentence was autocorrected by MS Word. So it's really that level of a tool, because it is just a software that has been built by somebody. So who has that responsibility or accountability? Then the problem of originality and plagiarism, for instance, comes in. Right at the of the hat, everybody jumped in and said, oh, it's plagiarism, plagiarism, plagiarism. But really, is it? Because there is no previous work for the student to copy. The content that is being produced is absolutely 100% original every time. That's why when two people give the same prompt, even the same person gives the same prompt twice, you don't get the same answer, because it is generating 100% original information. But there is a copyright concern in the background. So it's not plagiarism, but there is copyright concerns. The same thing goes for contract cheating. Is it contract cheating if you can't hold somebody responsible? Because third party is defined as an entity that can take responsibility. We know there are detection challenges around artificial intelligence generated content. Simple conversations, seemingly right information. And this is really scary, because even now, in fact, I was just reading something yesterday, and it said there is still about 19% error in the information that it is putting together. There is something called hallucination that happens for artificial intelligent models. What that basically means is it's got a training set, right? And you've asked it a question. It's going to look at the training set to develop an answer for you. Now, if it can't find the answer, it's still going to try and put something together and very confidently give you that answer. And it could be 100% wrong. But unlike a human being, it's not going to come back and say, oh, I don't know this answer, so don't take this the answer that I'm producing at face value. It reduces writing skills. We've been hearing that a lot from teachers who are teaching ESL, EFL. There is, of course, bias in algorithms and training data, and so on and so forth. Putting some of these into perspective, if you actually see them in visually, for instance, here, this is just showing you that ChatGPT or any of the generative AI cannot be used as a search tool, because you cannot verify the source. Plus, as long as the data is not being up to date, it is always going to be a little bit behind in the information that is giving you. It could very easily generate code or any kind of technical answer that you're looking for. But again, remember hallucination. So unless you understand coding really well, you understand the mathematical formulas really well, you will take everything at face value because it so confidently gives you the answers. Here is another example. It says it's suggesting relevant sources. I have actually checked those sources and none of those exist. There are even free softwares that are being integrated into our existing softwares like Microsoft, Bing, etc. And this one that I'm showing you, for instance, it's telling you that it's drawing images of cells. But I've actually verified this with a health personnel, and they've said this has no meaning. Yeah. So again, scary that it is able to do imaging at that level and create this level of fake data. Of course, the bias is very, very, very glaring. And we know this already about any kind of artificial intelligence. This is just an example of if you asked it to develop images of housekeeper, unfortunately, as you can see, it is very racially and ethnically biased in what it is portraying. So how worrying is all of this? That might be the first question to look at, right? Remember, I said Gen AI tools are just tools because we've been facing issues with cheating and academic concerns with technology for a while. All of these examples that you see in your screen are things that students have been using and have used in the past to cheat, right? Whether it's apps on a phone or smart devices that they're using, Bluetooth devices that they're using, printing, editing, fake data, etc. All of this has been there for a while. That's why we have a term called e-cheating or electronic cheating. Of course, then there is also the issue of contract cheating, where again, these contract cheating service providers are quite prolific. They're quite experienced in the way they approach students, making their services look very, very realistic, very, very authentic, and something that even probably the university approves, like the one that you see on the right. It is a screenshot of a company that was saying students from UAE top universities buy their essays and assignments here. And then they've got all these logos confusing students. Again, things that are there online, and it's become more easier because of easy e-commerce, internet, websites. So, you can easily publicize your services across borders and so on and so forth. If you think about bias, and I mentioned bias with an image before from a Gen AI, but now look at this example that I'm going to show you, and that will really give you a perspective on the bias of artificial intelligence. So I'm from Bangladesh, so my primary language is Bengali, which is a non-gendered language. What that means is we don't have a he and a she. So my table and chair are all just items, as opposed to the he chair and the she chair, he table and a she chair. So for a non-gendered language like this, I went to Google. I said, she's a doctor, he's a nurse. And I asked it for translation. Now, I know a lot of you will not understand the translation, but you can see that the letters are exactly the same that I have just copied and pasted now, so that I can translate it back from Bengali to English. Unfortunately, do you see what has gone wrong? I said she's a doctor, he's a nurse, but the model automatically assumes the man is the doctor and the woman is the nurse. So when it is translating back, because it's a non-gendered language, it has given the doctor a gender and the nurse a gender, and it says the man is the doctor and the woman is the nurse. So you can again see that these concerns are there, they're very real, but they're not necessarily new. So that brings me to the whole idea of making decisions. And that's what we really need to be focusing on. How are we making decisions? And decision making can be complex yet simple. And I'll give you this very quick example. What you see on the left is a video of a cheating scandal that happened in a country in 2015, where what you see is people climbing the walls of a school to throw chits of answers into the room where the students are writing their exams. This, of course, became, as you can imagine, became a global scandal, and news agencies all over the world were kind of covering it. When parents were asked, why did you do it? They said, of course I will do it because I need to ensure my child has the same advantage as everybody else. And two, because even if they lose a 0.1% mark, there's a chance that they might not be able to pursue their career. They're justifying what they have done. If you see the video on the left, on the right, same country, few years later, this also became a scandal because the principal there decided to put cardboard boxes on students' heads because he said he was so fed up of students cheating and he wanted to uphold the integrity of his exams. Both seem to have justified the decisions that they have made. Philosophers have said today's society believes and justifies the means, which is defined as if a goal is morally important enough, any method of achieving it is acceptable. The problem here is important enough and any method. Who decides what's important and who decides what method is okay? Now, that brings me to ethical decision making. Now, the problem is ethical decision making isn't just about the outcome that I'm looking at, but the manner in which we achieve it. So the question then is, are we really teaching our students to be ethical decision makers? These theories of philosophy have been around for a while, whether it's looking at social contract theory of justice as fairness, or we are looking at consequentialist theories like act utilitarianism or rule utilitarianism, or we are looking at intentions and goodwill like Kantianism. All of these theories have been existing for a while. And when you teach ethics, we are teaching these theories. Similarly, for digital responsibility and ethics, again, the ethical theories have evolved to give us digital ethics. And again, if we've had ethics as a subject for students taking digital literacy, we have taught them these theories. But we keep asking who's cheating and how to catch them when it actually comes to ultimately looking at academic conduct. Problem with that is we are asking who is cheating and how to catch them. We ourselves have a huge question mark on how we are making our decisions. Instead, we should be asking why are students cheating and how can we help students make better decisions. And this is where really the culture of academic integrity comes in. Being able to develop that culture in our classrooms from day one is absolutely imperative so that we are able to ensure that our students are able to make better decisions in the future. It's not something I can just get up and hope my students have. And I think, again, COVID really taught us this because students were not, couldn't have eye contacts. We didn't have access to students in their homes. We were completely dependent on whatever decisions they were making. So academic integrity basically is compliance with ethical and professional principles, standards, practices. And basically it comes down to upholding values of fairness, honesty, trust, responsibility, respect, and courage. Doesn't matter what the pressure or circumstances. How do we do this? How do we ensure that we are able to collectively build this culture of integrity? We need to do this through awareness and through upskilling. An example I've given here, for instance, is I'm not sure how many of you are aware that there's actually a definition now of what it is to use AI, without acknowledgement or approval when you're doing it in an academic setting. It's called UCG, or unauthorized content generation. And it was developed by the European Network for Academic Integrity last year. Upskilling, thinking about digital skill upskilling for teachers, but also for students, but not just digital upskilling, but ethical digital upskilling for teachers and for students, letting teachers know how they can use these tools so that they're able to make better decisions, letting students know how and where they can use these tools, how they can acknowledge and give attribution so that they are not crossing the line of ethical considerations. So here's a list, a very short list of upskilling and raising awareness that we can do. Things like I said, skill requirements, training programs, thinking also about like assessment tools, introducing evaluation metrics to actually measure ethical competence, guideline creations, compliance, ensuring that we don't just have the policies, but there is adherence to the policies on campus, encouraging personal reflection. Doesn't matter that I'm not teaching an ethics code, but encouraging that reflection irrespective of the subject that I'm teaching. They're ensuring that institutional culture, that everybody on campus is has bought into that ethos that we are trying to bring in. Curriculum integration, new courses, continuous learning, review mechanisms to go back and look at these ethical AI practices and policies that we have. Are they working? Do they need updating? Leveraging technology, community engagement, and so on and so forth. In the end, the final takeaway for me is please be clear on the expectations and usage. And most importantly, think about how to get students to take more responsible decisions rather than just thinking about how to stop them from using just a tool. With that, I come to the end of my presentation. Thank you.
Oh, brilliant. Thank you so much for that, Zeenath. That was really such an insightful insight into generative artificial intelligence within the education sector and sort of the concerns and challenges we can address and overcome to really benefit from this technology. So you've stopped sharing your screen now, which is brilliant. And just a quick reminder that if anyone does have questions for Zeenath, please do put them in the Q&A box within the webinar. So with that being said, I'd like to now introduce our second speaker, Olumide Popoola. Olu is an education developer and an applied linguist at Queen Mary University of London. He holds a plethora of accolades, including an LLB in law, an MSc in forensic linguistics, and a PhD in applied linguistics. Alongside his current role, Olu also works freelance as a linguistics consultant and also runs a successful blog called Outlier. So Olu, it's really great to have you here. You've shared your screen now, so if you'd like to kick off, that would be fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I should just correct that lovely introduction slightly. I am still working towards my PhD by publication. Otherwise, everything else is correct. Here are a couple of the publications that have set me on my way. And I'm just pointing out the abstract from one of them. So I've done looked at linguistic ways of detecting contract cheating prior to the mainstreaming of generative AI. And the findings there, ways of detecting ghostwriting and essay mills. I'm just going to share those with you quickly since this is about AI. I don't want to focus too much on AI detection, but I do want to share the findings from that research that I conducted trying to detect linguistically contract cheating, ghostwriting through essay mills. And you may, if you looked into AI detection and Gen AI detection, you may feel that there are some similarities here between how to detect ghostwritten contract cheating and AI generation. So there's something to think about. There's a lot of conversation about the AI detections and AI detectors, whether they work. They don't work at the moment, but they could work if more linguistics was used and less statistics. But I'm not going to dwell on that today. Today, I want to talk to you about the idea of making integrity great again. Academic integrity is central to my practice as an education developer. I work on assessment design, social justice pedagogies, metacognitive development, and all from the perspective of academic integrity. So I want to share this enthusiasm with you and some ideas and a little case study of my practice in terms of trying to make integrity a thing, make integrity great again. These hats do exist. The website is makeIntegrityGreatAgain.org. So a three-step plan, if you like, encompassing design, assessment briefing, and the modeling of academic integrity. And I'm just going to talk through these quickly. So in terms of assessment design, this is a summary here of work and research conducted as an ed developer at Queen Mary Academy. So assessment design for academic integrity encompasses ideas such as not having grades, ungrading, co-creation of assessment with students, reducing assessment load, focusing on processes rather than a product. And this latter idea, process of assessment rather than the product and assessing the process, is even more urgent with the mainstreaming of generative AI. We might even ask how valuable now the create, if you're familiar with Bloom's taxonomy and the idea of creating and originality being the highest order thinking, we might question whether that is the case now. Originality is there at the touch of a button. So we may even want to start reversing that taxonomy, looking more at things like applying and comparing. But in the design process, we talk about academic integrity, and we talk to students about it. And based on feedback from students, we have got this map here, one of the heuristics that we are using. And the two dimensions here in terms of assessment design, thinking about the uniqueness of the questions and how much grading is involved. That's a summative formative axis. And one of the things that we found was that students feel that questions or exam questions that are reused from last year or that are similar to previous years or similar to questions used in other institutions, because you can find similar ones on the internet. You know, this practice that many of us educators have done reusing exam questions. This is considered by students to be plagiarism, and therefore hypocritical. So that's one of the things about the dimension here about questions. When you can design your assessment, try to make the questions personal, more personal, not reused, take grades out of the question, things like that. So assessment design is one aspect of creating this culture of integrity and making integrity great again. And here is another heuristic that came out of that research in the map that I just showed you. Some simple tools. You probably have something like this yourself, but assessment integrity is something that is worth considering and thinking about at a program level, at a module level as well. So this is the design aspect. In terms of assessment briefing, I work with the mantra, and I try to disseminate this mantra to my colleagues, that the brief is not the test. What do we mean by that? And why have we got this graph here? Do you remember when assessment was designed to catch students out? I was at university in the 90s, and the assessment brief, if there was one that was more than a couple of lines, it had to be decoded. It almost felt like it was part of the test. But in order to promote integrity, I would argue that the assessment brief should be easier to understand than the assessment itself. And it should make it easier to understand the assessment itself. And the analogy here, and we've asked this of educators at various institutions, at my institution and at conferences, what reading level, let's take insurance policies, health information, and inevitably assessment briefs came out highest of all of these. And I would say to the educators who said that, well, you want people to understand health information, so actually you make the reading age 14. You want people to understand their insurance policies, and there are laws about that now. So actually, you make the reading age 16. And I think not in the UK yet, but in some countries, I think in North America, there are rules about reading age and these kind of documents. So why are we making our assessment briefs college level rather than high school level? Educators that I say this to bristle slightly. Well, our students should know, should be able to understand. And there we go back to the original point. Would you say that about information about COVID or insurance? So there's a lot that can be done with assessment briefing. But what I want to focus on mainly in this short presentation, ways to make integrity great again, is this idea of modeling integrity. As an educator, taking pride in demonstrating your integrity, and to do this, I want to share with you a case study of my practice. So this is guidance developed for the educator programs at my university. So I'm a module convener on the PG CAP, PG Cert, all of the many institutions will have this training for lecturers, and they do assignments, and we made academic integrity guidance for these assignments, but it had a dual purpose. It was for the assignments of the educators, that they were doing, but it was also to model the example of a brief that you can that they can give to their own students. So I'm going to share this with you. This is how we brief our educators on assignments with this dual purpose of guidance for their assignments and modeling for students. So the first thing we do, we allow the use of Turnitin similarity report. We allow it to be used formatively up to 3 times. Too many times means students may use it to mask plagiarism rather than avoid it. And what we found is that the similarity report, it still needs explaining to educators. Those of us who work in academic integrity or some shade of academic educator learning development, we're living in a bubble where we think everybody knows this stuff. It is not the case. So it needs some explaining, and you can imagine if it needs explaining to the educators, it will need explaining to the learners as well. Another thing that we try to do is make the link between integrity and critical thinking. So, you know, the idea that your words are evidence of your thinking, so if there's a lot of similarity, then that's not your thinking. We try to make that link, and we encourage that link to be made to students. Also, talk about all the things that you can cite. We talk about research papers and things like that. And as academics, one is skewed towards this kind of output, but students appreciate and will appreciate the whole purpose and purpose of academic integrity and referencing things like that. They know they can reference anything and everything. And so talk about all the cool things that you can reference. My former supervisor at Birmingham, Professor Jack Reeve, would always like to put a cool reference into one of his papers. Now that's a very academic joke, but wouldn't it be great if our students could appreciate the joke? And I've got a reference list from one of his papers. This was a paper. He's an applied linguist writing about African American English variation. And he put in this reference. He was said that Washington D.C. has a lot of African Americans, and the reference was Parliament 1975. And those of you who are fans of P-Funk and Parliament Funkadelic, One Nation Under the Groove, or that will recognize this and think, wow, how cool is that? You may do, but it's a nice idea to do this. You might think it's gratuitous, but the reference actually ended up helping him out when he received somewhat negative feedback from African Americans about his claims to be an authority on the language, but the reference gave him credentials. Signposting is important, so we reference that, and then onto the use of generative AI. So what we've done for the educators, and this is a modeling of what we think is a good idea, is appropriate. Use it, but just acknowledge it. And this process of acknowledgement, what we found is that this process of acknowledgement, it doesn't look too onerous, but it forces assignment submitters to think about their integrity, and that seems to be working. Other aspects of integrity modeling, reference your images, discuss that academic writing is a peculiar brand of writing. It's very much intertextual. Talk about that. And maybe the idea of academic integrity as a social justice pedagogy. What do we mean by that? One interesting initiative I've seen at Leeds University, interesting work being done there by Lorna Waddington, amongst others, and there's an interesting project, Eric Atwell, decolonize reading lists, that I came across. That's social justice, and the reading list is your reference list. So that act of referencing is an act of social justice if you're including voices that are not necessarily included very much. And other interesting work being done, particularly in York by Stephen Gow and colleagues. Finally, on the note of acknowledgement, I'm wondering if there's time for a new justification or quotation for academic integrity. We're using Isaac Newton, Standing on the Shoulders of Giants. Eugene Richardson, in his incredible book, Epidemic Illusions, which is about the coloniality of global public health, incredible for many reasons, but one of them is it's a great book for academic integrity. It's full of references, and the references are so clever, so playful, so critical. Here is one. Generally, I like this quote here: my ideas are not my ideas, but rather a form of network dialogue. Can we use this instead of standing on the shoulders of giants? Who knows? But what I've highlighted here, this is my emphasis. I have also wrestled with the perfect, genuine, complete, crystalline, and he talks about the authors that he is using. And where does that quote come from? Colonel Kurtz in Apocalypse Now. That's the coolest reference winner for me. But generally, talking about that just to get as it's to model the idea of getting excited about references and academic integrity. So that's my slice of best practice and ideas, a little that mini brainstorm. Over to everybody else now for questions and such.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Olu. That was brilliant. Just getting everyone thinking about assessment design and, constantly rethinking assessments in the context of AI. So to continue to promote a culture of academic integrity. So thank you. So we've got lots of time now for questions. And thank you to everyone who sent questions in before. I can see we've had a few pop up on the chat. So let's see if we can get through as many as possible. So the first question, which was actually put on the chat during your presentation, Olu, so I believe it's for you, was just to clarify, by the assessment brief, does this refer to the guidelines and rubric?
Yes, absolutely. Usually it's written in Word. Why not make a video assessment brief? For example, and it could be that whole process. It could be a lesson, briefing. But yes, usually it's just a guide on Word with a marking rubric, which is very hard to understand. But think about other ways of doing it. Maybe dedicating a lesson video, things like that.
Perfect, brilliant. Thank you for that. So on to the next question, which is from Sultan, who's from Turkey. And he asks, is there any framework available to guide students through so that they can use AI ethically?
I think there are coming up. I know Dr. Mike Perkins from Vietnam British University has published something that it's a nice little continuum that he has created. It says you can use 100% to 0%. So if you look through that rubric that he has created, it's a table. I think what's happening though is there are these frameworks that are coming up. People are publishing based on their practices. Unfortunately, they're very research heavy, so it's being circulated among academics. I don't know that it has trickled down to students yet. Olu, this was my observation. Olu?
I'm not aware of frameworks in the academic arena yet, but in the commercial world, Amazon is using for its authors, the writers, the difference between AI generated and AI assisted. And AI assisted writing, these books will be allowed, and AI generated not. So that I've tried to define I've used that, and I used that in the writing that I did for Epigeum, and try to define that in the academic context, moving it from the commercial context. So that has been quite useful, and I think it's something that others can use, and maybe as a community we might develop our own academic version of AI generated versus AI assisted, what the difference is.
Brilliant, thank you both there. Hopefully that answers your question, Sultan. So the next one that we've got here is from Sydney. And Sydney asks, what would be the best way to promote responsible and ethical use of AI tools in academia? I know it was touched upon in both your presentations, but Zeenath, did you want to go first? Was there
Sorry, what was the question?
Sorry, I'll just repeat that for you. Yeah. Sydney asks, what would be the best way to promote responsible and ethical use of AI tools in academia?
So I think it starts with us first. And that's why I said we need to get the we into this picture, because it's our practices that students are bouncing off of. So I'll give you two examples. If I'm a lecturer who's telling my students, don't use Gen AI at all, it's just not allowed. The first thing that students are going to do is open up one of the Gen AI tools. So it's starting with me and my behavior. If I want my students to use Gen AI tools, I need to be absolutely clear how I want my students to use it. So I need to, if I can't find, I need to develop a rubric of how I want my students to use it, where I want my students to use it. For instance, I teach a lot of management information system subjects. So you might think that these are technical subjects, so why would I want students to use Gen AI? But there's a lot of report writing that's involved in these subjects. So I have a rubric myself for my subjects where I have a list of 14 points that students have to go through on how they can use Gen AI, in what parts of that assessment they are allowed to use it. If they use it, the kind of screenshots they need to take, the kind of prompt savings that they need to do, and the way they need to reflect and submit a page of the reflection of how their writing changed because they use Gen AI. So in the process, I'm also teaching the student how to actually use Gen AI to benefit their writing rather than taking information and just copying and pasting. So when I'm that clear about my instructions, students have very less gray areas to work with. And they know when they see that kind of instruction that I can approach this teacher and ask her some more questions instead of trying to run away from her and hide and still use Gen AI. So I think, again, we need to bring ourselves into this picture first so that we can encourage that responsibility in students. When they see us being responsible, they'll automatically be responsible.
If I could come at that from a slightly different point of view, whilst agreeing with everything about putting the educator in and modeling it, how about looking at the assessment? There's an idea, and I think there's a website, Dissertations for Good. The idea that assessment should be for social good, should have some social value. The product of the assessment should have some social value. In that case, you don't need to focus on the ethical use of Gen AI, but ethical use, ethical assessment, socially valuable assessment, make that worthwhile. And then get everybody on board to use AI for it, because it's going to be doing some good if it can help.
Fantastic. No, that was brilliant answers from you both. Thank you. So hopefully that answers Sydney's question. We've got one from Jerry next, which is quite interesting. Jerry says, new tech aids eventually become accepted in assessment. So he gives the example of spell check. Will that happen with AI? And what do you think the implications would be? Ollie, should we start with you?
Yeah.
Yes, I think so. I think it will happen. I think thinking positively, one scenario that I imagine is that the level of undergrad degrees, postgrad degrees, it all goes up. So what a first year does, what a third year does now is what a first year will be asked to do. What a master's student, PhD student does now is what a master's student will be asked to do. Because at the moment, people say, oh, things are much easier with AI, but still, you couldn't get a second year undergrad to write a PhD thesis. They still couldn't do it at the moment, but they possibly could write a master's dissertation with it. So raise the bar and make that the level for the undergrads. I'm sure if you break that down, there'll be reasons why that can't happen or unlikely to happen, but that's the optimistic view that I have.
Mm-hmm.
Perfect, brilliant. Did you want to add anything to that, Zeenath? I think Ollie covered it quite nicely.
I think so. I think he covered it really well. And the only thing I'll say here, I think I come from AI ethics background, is with the Gen AI wave that happened last year, believe it or not, the industry has been really quick to look at upskilling and reskilling their people on AI ethics, because there is an element of money involved. If they get into trouble, it's a legal problem, they get sued, etc., etc. We have not seen the same level of awareness and acceptance in the academic world. And we need that to happen for all of this that we are discussing to actually become realities for us. That's all I'll add.
That was wonderful. Yeah, I could completely agree. Perfect. So that's a lovely answer to that question. So we've got time for a few more, which is brilliant. The next question we have is from Shamara. So Shamara asks, the rapid integration of artificial intelligence into academia has brought with it rapid changes to rules and regulations, and has simply asked, where do we draw the line on this?
Well, unfortunately, I don't think we have seen rules and regulations trickling down to classrooms yet at the rate that we would want to. Most of the changes that we have seen have been very generic. For instance, students must acknowledge and give correct attribution. And they must use Gen AI only when they're allowed, for instance, right? But that's a very vague statement to make. What do you make of this? What do teachers make of this? Ultimately, what do students make of this, right? So I don't think anything hard and fast has come down yet. We have not seen that level of practical, rules and regulations of the broad statements that have been made by different institutions, by different organizations. That is, again, my experience, probably from UAE, very different than anybody else. But we all work with a few of the other countries through European Network, and we are seeing similar feedback coming through, that a lot of people are not really worried because they've not seen anything hard and fast, so to speak, in black and white in writing, right? We're seeing a lot of frameworks, a lot of advice, and this is generally with AI ethics, any kind of digital ethics, is that a lot of this is just advice. It would be great if you did X, Y, Z, but there is no hard and fast implementation of these advices that are coming through. What will happen when we do have that? I don't know, because I do know a few universities have just turned around and said, no, you're not allowed to use Gen AI at all. That doesn't really serve anybody well when you make a statement like that. It's progress. You cannot halt progress. You're not using it, but your students 100% are using it. So you should know what they're using and how they're using it. So if you're just burying our heads like ostriches, it's not going to help anybody. That's my take on that question.
Brilliant. Did you have anything to add there, Ollie? I think Zeenath covered that quite well.
Just get the students involved in making the rules, to co-create the rules.
Yeah, brilliant. Well, I think we've got time for just one quick question. So this was submitted through the chat throughout the webinar, and it's surrounding basically Turnitin AI reports. So this person has asked, although some students do acknowledge AI use, the Turnitin AI report usually shows 30% or some more cases are actually quite higher. Usually the students will have a marks penalty or academic misconduct case. What do you think is the right way to go about this?
To go about what, using Turnitin detection, or?
I believe so, yeah. So they've asked about acknowledging AI use, which some students admit to, but I think the reports usually show that AI use is much higher. So if there's academic misconduct case that a student's building, what's the right way for them to go about it?
Zeenath, how to deal with academic misconduct. I think, that's I would put them all in jail. So I think we better talk about that.
I think we have to be very cautious whenever we're using any kind of detection tools. The onus still remains with us and not on the tool itself, because again, even that is a tool and it is not 100%. Even the companies themselves are saying it's not 100%. And now there are plenty of studies that have come out showing the errors of just depending 100% on these tools. So if I do use a tool and it does alert me that, okay, the student has probably used it, I think I need to use my judgment of the subject content and of the student's writing ability to look at that and really decide. And I think by now, after 1.5 years of having GenAI in our lives, when we read something, we know automatically, oh, this person has, you read emails and you smile, right? Because this person's English emails have become suddenly so fantastic. Because they're using GenAI in the background. Same thing. Let's use that knowledge when we are looking at assessments. And if it has been flagged, have a look at it. And then do a Viva. Do a quick Viva with the student to figure out their level of understanding that they've put on the paper versus what they're telling you. So I think the onus still stays with us, whether it's just plagiarism and checking whether they've just copied and pasted, or this, or contract cheating. I think the onus still comes back to us, the we.
Brilliant. Thank you for tackling that. I think that's a great answer. Thank you. So I think that's probably all we've got time for today. But a really, really big thank you to both of our panelists, Zeenath and Olu. It's been an absolute pleasure having you. Your presentations have been fantastic. I feel like I need to do a whole load of research following on from this. So thank you for having you here today and for answering our questions as well. So I think that's everything. I hope everyone has a wonderful rest of your day, and do get in touch with Epigeum if you've got any further questions that we can answer. But if there's nothing else, I think that's everything. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you. It was really great being here and engaging.
Marianne, Katie, Epigeum, good to see you again. Zeenath, thank you. Speak soon.
Thank you. Goodbye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.